super sad, AKA depressed. But my personality at that time, you couldn't come and tell me nothing if you ain't have A, B, C, D, and E together. And I was talking about physical and material stuff. You couldn't come and tell me nothing because on paper I had it going on. Came from a single black mother household, taught us how to handle our business, get our own. That's what I did. So if you couldn't come to me and speak a certain way, look a certain way, handle my tough personality, you couldn't tell me nothing. So I can admit now today that there were people in my space who wanted to help and they just didn't know how. Maybe I intimidated them a little bit. Maybe I was super aggressive. We ain't gonna say maybe. We're gonna keep it a buck. I was. I grew out of that.
I was gonna say, I was just gonna interject, like, sis, you sure maybe?
Tell the truth. Tell the truth. No.
Speak it out.
So I didn't make it easy for people to come and try to help me. Even if they may not have known how, I didn't make it easy at all. And I felt intimidated with a psychiatrist, not because, oh, you went to school and got all these degrees. I felt uncomfortable telling you my upbringing or telling you my story because I didn't want you to judge me any further. You already judged me because I done cut myself. And you already think you got me figured out when you don't know nothing about me. So I'm not going to confide in you and tell you anything else. So years later, when I began to heal myself, I knew I was not the only person looking like me or not looking like me who fell through those cracks. Because I don't know like all the details and the stats because I'm not in the clinical space. But what I can tell you is that the way that mental illness is being treated hasn't changed that much. Now, of course, they stop with the lobotomies. Of course, they stop with the electroshock therapy. But when it comes to prescribing medication and talking about your feelings in a nice, soft voice, that part hasn't changed. That hasn't changed.
Well, now they have worksheets.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Oh,
let's be clear.
Worksheets.
Let's be clear. They have worksheets.
Well, you know, the thing about it is that, I personally don't think that you need a degree to have experience. I think experience overramps college education because you can be a 24-year-old with no experience but college and only know the book smarts of what that person's feeling. But then when you go into how to handle that person, they don't know. Now, I do want to bring up something you said a minute ago. You said that you could not relate to that therapist. Mm-hmm. And do you think, in your opinion, do you think that when it comes to indigenous people, black people, whatever, people of color, having a white therapist, even though they know the book smart of it, do you believe that they can help a person that is not of their race? And I know I'm gonna get a lot of slack for asking this question, and let me tell you, I'm gonna tell you why I asked this question after she answers the question.
I know. So my personal experience, it did not work for me because he and we didn't see eye to eye. I gamed the system, and what I mean is this: I spent so many psych emergency trips because it was a paid vacation, meaning I wasn't gonna lose my job. I wasn't gonna get kicked out of my apartment. I wasn't a parent in the earlier days. I wasn't gonna get kicked out of my apartment. Everybody was gonna love on me and be concerned because when I told them prior to me admitting myself, no one took me seriously. People told me pray about it. People told me, oh, get over that man. People told me, oh, girl, you this, that, and the third. Why are you sad? People didn't take me seriously.
Right.
But when I disappeared for a day or two and came home with that bracelet and came home with that work excuse, everybody started being gentle towards me for a short period of time. So I gamed the system because every time life got too much, I knew that I could voluntarily commit myself. I knew I had a history of cutting. I learned the words to say to get admitted. Like, check my records. Check my records. Y'all know I cut myself. Check my records. But then by the one night I would spend there that next morning, and I would see people who were really, really mentally ill, meaning the stereotypical things, which are true because I've been there. You know, the screaming, the banging on the wall, the hearing voices, all those things. When I was ready to go home, I straightened up. I used my $30 words. I start smiling, talking to the doctors on their level. And to get that release, I kid you not. And I did that repeatedly. And I think that's what over time, they're like, hold on, we got to diagnose over something. She ain't here too much. So I finally got a diagnosis thinking that would help because I was ignorant to the system, and it didn't. So I'm saying that to say this. In my experience, no, that therapist who was of a different sex, a different race, came from a different socioeconomic background, a different culture, he could not help me pass his textbook knowledge. I don't feel it would have been different if it was a woman. I do feel it might have been different if I saw an older woman who know how it is to be raised in a single family household by a Black mother, who knows what it feels like to be a child growing up with an alcoholic dad.
You speak the same languages. You speak the same
languages. Exactly. So things that white doctor or non-Black doctor may diagnose as she's cutting herself, she's suicidal, she manic depressive, that therapists that might look like Amy or might look like grandmama might say, hold on, wait a minute, what happened? Okay, so let me talk to you about this and how did this happen? And not just talking to me just to have me rehash my business, but talking to me from a level of understanding and then offering that Amy, grandmother, uncle, grandfather guidance to help me through that. Because I know that I needed coping mechanisms. I wasn't taught that, so I was winging it and it didn't end up too well for me. And I know there's so many other people like that who just need better not making excuses for anyone's behavior. I'm just stating that when people aren't taught how to deal with things in a healthy manner, they do excessive things to try to cope.
I agree.
I think so too, though, the flip side of that sometimes some of us forget where we came from. So we can look like us, but after we get these degrees and these awards, we forget where we came from, and then we begin to look down. Yeah, so it's like a double-edged sword.
Okay, hold on.
I just have to. I wanted to jump in. I wanted to jump in real quick because I too, on this subject, kind of had some experience there with some family members, also personally, and dealing with it because as a lot of people, everybody that knows me knows the story of my mom and my brother, which is the reason why I had post-traumatic stress disorder from that ordeal. And in dealing with therapy from that perspective, my initial experiences, she hit the nail on the head with at first I'm like, okay, I definitely want a Black female therapist because I want somebody to be understand. I miss my mom. I lost my mom. I lost my brother. We were all we had. And she was just like, well, I mean, it would seem as though I couldn't be as open with her about my feelings about the loss, good, bad, or indifferent. It's supposed to be an open, safe space.
Right.
And, she's bringing in her personal interjections about her religion and her, so you kind of get that, well, what you mean that this and what you mean that's a relief from what? That's still your mother. Okay. And it did take me to get a white female therapist that's not from here. The one that I talk to you about, Inga, all the time, that's like, oh, that's my rock. That's the one I need to talk to her that gets me through.
You found somebody that can connect with you.
Correct.
Yes. That was not actually Black.
She, believe it or not, but if you talk to her on the phone, you never know. She doesn't, but the thing I love about her is not one of those people that pander, try to, some people like try to act like they know, or they try to act this way. People like try to act Black or try to act white. She's just who she is. But this is a woman who grew up in Kansas, but grew up poor, white Kansas, right there in the hood. And they basically treat them like they treat us. So she understands the struggle of being a poor white woman. Basically, if you watch Forrest Gump, Robin, or I think her name, no, Jenny, Jenny Hood. But a lot of her best friends were Black. So she understands Black culture, and she tries to empathize, but she tries to learn, doesn't profess to know, which I respect. You know what I mean? But she calls BS when she sees BS. But it was one of those things to where you finally had someone that is not annoying to her. It's like, oh girl, I get it, sister. Yes, sister.
And that's irritating. That's irritating.
So
I would
irritating.
not like that.
But it's one else, she's just real. I get real. You know what I mean? And when it's one of those things, and you know, where it's like, you know what? I don't have the right to speak on this. You know, I'm just gonna listen, and she will just know when to shut up, you know, and listen and know when to interject. And then when it was things that were out of her depth, she will admit it. And then I had Dwayne, which was a Black male therapist that she referred me to, which was perfect for me to get over some of my fears and my issues with Black men. And so sometimes you have to find people that you know that may not be someone that looks like you, to bridge the gap, to refer you to someone that looks like you, to adapt to your individuality, to know what they're doing well enough to help you find those people. Your people might be multiple people, and you might need that depending on what it is down the rabbit hole. It's like Alice in Wonderland, to get to where you need to go, and that's okay. But, you know, I'm here today still because of that, because of those losses. Just like what you said. Because like you said, there's some people that forget, like, girl, you was just Jawakatima Thomas down the street, okay, that was squatting outside because y'all didn't have no water last week. But I don't know who, what, when, where, because I smelled you in class.
You guys this question then. Let me ask you both this question for both of you. Do you think, and this is the question, do you think mental health comes from something that traumatic happened in your life that caused you not to be able to zone in on the right frequency when it comes to life? Like something happened to you that you know you can't shut your eyes to it, and in your mind you got to find a way to deal with it. You guys think that?
Sometimes, but sometimes you're born with it. Sometimes it's genetic, because like how they say alcoholism is genetic. What I found is, and what is ironic is, I think I told you about this actually last year.
Well, I'm only talking about manic depressive, not schizophrenia.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Manic depressive comes from serotonin. It's a chemical in our body that's naturally produced. You only produce so much in your lifetime, and it's a hard enzyme for the body to produce. It's hereditary. So sometimes it comes from a traumatic event. But if your parents didn't produce a lot, therefore you are deficient in it as well. It also comes from poor diet and things of that nature. So sometimes it's from a traumatic event, but sometimes it's an imbalance, just like any other chemical in your body.
What do you think, CoachVEE? What do you think?
So one of the things that I've learned in creating my brand, Mental Health is Sexy, is that there's an educational component that has to be communicated every single time. And this is what I mean. And then too, I'm OCD, so I know that's part of that's really a mental illness. I found that out in a certification class. I was like, what? I'm double? No. So I'm super OCD. So
you good, you good.
Thank you. And me being OCD, one of the things that I do is I'm very intentional when I speak. So that makes me listen hard when other people speak, because I'm intentional, right? So with that being said, when I'm sharing my brand, Mental Health is Sexy, I created that brand with 3 objectives in mind. One is to change the narrative around mental health, and I'll explain that in a moment. 2 is to influence the way mental health services are being delivered. And that's because not everybody, such as my story, responds to medication and psychiatry. You got to open that up to other means. And number 3, to help erase the stigma around mental illness. I say that to say this: when we talk about mental health, everybody on this planet has mental health. Yeah. Just like everybody on this planet has physical health. It's just that the emphasis is placed on the physical side. So because everybody has physical health, that doesn't mean everybody will suffer a physical illness.
Right.
It could be hereditary, as Ingrid said. It could be something they do on their own. It could be trauma related from an accident. It could be their eating habits. So everyone has mental health. When we see people go to the gym, there's a fair amount of people in there who are there to lose weight and to reduce diabetes or eliminate it and come off their blood pressure medicine. But then there's also a huge amount of people who have zero physical illnesses,
Right.
but they're in there to maintain the physical health that they currently have.
Yes.
I say all that to say this.
Right.
When we talk about mental health, everybody has mental health. So it's not an issue of, oh, I don't have that. No, you do. Everybody has mental health. But sometimes, whether it's hereditary, whether it's trauma, whether it's an accident, it triggers a mental illness. And when we talk about mental illness, we have to understand what mental health is. And mental health, a basic definition is the outlook you have about yourself, the outlook you have about everybody else, like around you, the people around you.
Come on.
The outlook you have about society, the world, the universe in general, whichever word you want to sprinkle in there. So if I have a positive outlook about myself, more than likely, I'm going to have a positive outlook about Sister Inga and Sister Ingrid, because I have a positive outlook about myself.
Yeah.
But if I feel bad about myself, if I lack self-love, if I feel I'm too fat, too skinny, not smart enough, dumb, I hate how I was raised, I'll never amount to nothing. All the things that people can help program up here, because we don't grow up thinking these bad things.
No, we don't.
Programmed in us.
We don't.
It's programmed, right? So if I have that type of outlook about myself, I'm not going to see nothing beautiful in you. I'm not going to see nothing beautiful in my neighbors, and I'm not going to see nothing beautiful in society at large.
Come on.
Always going to think the world's out to get me. Everybody's out to get me. I hate everybody. Don't nobody want nothing good, blah, 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 blah. So again, I say that to say this. Everybody has mental health. So it's not an issue about whether you have mental health or not. Mental illness comes in when something has happened, internally or externally, sometimes a combination, that skews the way you think about yourself, the people around you, and the world at large.
Wow. Wow.
Anything. And I think that's so important for people to understand, because we shy away from that conversation. But we'll talk about the latest diet, keto, paleo, vegetarian,
Ain't that it?
drink alkaline water. We'll talk about everything else related to physical health. And we eliminate what's going on up here. And usually it's an idea that somebody outside of us has placed. And that's what I talk about in my book too, and I guess we'll get to that in a little bit, but it's usually an idea that somebody has planted from outside of you about you that makes you feel bad, that you choose to believe at some point in life. Wow. That's where you have that skewed perspective. We're not born with a mental illness. There could be things lingering to trigger it, that's hereditary, right? But we're not born depressed. We're not born with anxiety.
That answers my question. That answers what I just asked. Do you think that it comes from something else? Can something other than people that have, like, you know, schizophrenia, things like that, or, you know, the taste of blood? I mean, those are things that probably some kind of thing happened to the mother. But I'm saying that the antidepressant, I believe what you just said. I think that somewhere along the line, something happened to that person. It could be anything. Like, I still believe that we don't address young women coming from the age of 9 years old to 12 years old. We don't talk about that in between. Let me help you remember what the in between feels like. You don't feel like you're a teenager. You feel ugly. Your nose is too big. Your eyes are too wide. You see what I'm saying? Every woman I know that's of color have felt that at a teenage year, from 9 years old to 12, that in between.
That awkward moment. Yep. Mm-hmm.
The awkward
man,
moment.
even them early 20s, because I was looking at some of them early Facebook pictures, like, boy, I ain't even grown to my nose.
We don't talk about it, commit suicide because of that feeling, that we don't address it. We don't talk about that. You know, even our parents don't tell you, okay, you're going to have this feeling between this age. And the only reason why I'm talking about that right now, because I have a daughter. And she helped me remember, oh, wait a minute, I did feel that way. Oh, I did feel ugly. Oh, no boys did like me. I was too thin or too fat or too whatever. I think that the key to us really solving the issue of, this manic depression, mental health within the Black culture. I don't know about the white culture. I don't know. I know that our struggles are different. I see them every day. I just seen it yesterday. Man being gunned down in the middle of the street in front of his children. Those kids, they're gonna go through mental health. They're gonna go through depression.
Mental illness. They'll have a mental
They're
health
gonna
challenge.
have it. Yeah. So we need as a culture, we should recognize that and talk about it and run to these kids, because we know they're gonna have mental issues. Which way it goes?
But some things are also during that age very hormonal, because your hormones started changing, and actually during that age, that is actually during the age where the first symptoms of manic depressive disorders start to exhibit themselves. And that is why, I'm gonna share some. That's why with my son, like, I started watching him carefully, like a hawk, just to look through certain things are, that's teenage blues and rebellion. They're going to be rebellious, and this and third. And one thing about myself, I am very much a say doer type of person. If I tell you I'm gonna whoop you, I'm gonna whoop you. If I tell you I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it. I'm not an idle, empty threat person. So with him, when he was waiting for the punishment portion to come with certain things and waiting for that to happen with things around the home and things like that, I knew it had to be something outside of himself, because no one wants to deal with my temper. Trust me on that, on an elective part. Not trying to sound big and bad, but it's you don't want to do it. So that's when you have to look outside of parents out there. And I'm only sharing this for parents out there to help someone. Don't always think the worst of your child and think to punish positive and negative reinforcement. Look deeper, because no child is choosing punishment first. If they know that their parent is going to follow through with the punishment, it's got to be something outside of themselves. And so you have to look to help them. And when we finally figured out what it was, and I know I called you with this, my child came in my room. There are very few things in this world that make me cry, okay? And when that child walked in there and said, "Mom, I just want to thank you for loving me enough to figure out what it was, and not to make me feel bad about myself, to break a cycle." We have to stop making our children feel bad about themselves. People of color, Black people, brown people, stop it. Stop feeling like beating your child, throwing your child in the corner, telling them they're stupid, or telling them they're not worthy, or telling them they don't care, or whatever it is you feel is going to make them rise to the occasion of your expectation. Stop it. Figure out what's wrong, because they're not choosing to disappoint you.
No.
You're what they come from. You know what I'm saying? Since we're speaking about mental health, I felt it was relevant at this point. And since you talked about that age thing, it just popped out in my mind to say something when you talked about Olivia, because I know how much you love her. And when he came in my room, I literally cried for 4 hours. I am not a crybaby person. Like, things really have to move me to bring me to tears. And I knew at that moment I broke a cycle. And for my child to be a 19-year-old Black man in America, and for us to be as tight as we are, and I'm a single Black mother because I divorced his father, and for us to still be as close as we are, I hold that very dear. And we figured out what the issue was. He's thriving and surviving, and I haven't had to yell at him for over 3 months about chores.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because we figured it out. But it's because I took the time to try to understand my child.
Now, your book itself, because we ran out of time. Your book itself. So I know you're an author. So what's this book about? Mental health is the new sexy? Is it sexy? Mental health is sexy.
Well, so
yeah, tell them about that. Yeah.
Yes. So there's two things. My brand that I created is Mental Health is Sexy. That's the brand that I created, independent of the book. So the brand, as I mentioned, has 3 key objectives, right? To change the narrative around mental health, to influence the way mental health services are being delivered, and to erase the stigma around mental illness. But the reason why I put those words together is because when we think about something being sexy, 99.99% of the time, we will climb the highest mountain and swim the farthest sea to attain it. Whether it's a physical body shape, a credit score, a spouse, a car, a job. When we think something is sexy and it didn't caught our eye, we zone in. We zone in. If it takes a year or 10 years, we zone in on it, right?
Pretty much.
So when we think about the definition of sexy, some words that come to mind are alluring, attractive, and desirable. That's why we are so aggressive in pursuing that thing we think is sexy. I just feel like mental health should be one of those things.
Right.
Even when speed dating, the questions are credit score, what's your 5-year plan? You know, what's your relationship with your mama? How many kids you like? There's hardly ever any questions. It's going to change now because I'm saying it. Any questions about what do you do? What do you do to support your mental health? What do you do when you're stressed? What type of vices or practices do you have? What's your self-care routine? So the Mental Health is Sexy brand is all inclusive of all those things I described and more, so that the masses can understand, like, this is important. I want this. This is my thing. Mental health is sexy. Let's say it. I invested in my brand. It's trademarked and on file. Y'all gonna see it everywhere. We're gonna stand in agreement. Amen. Shalom.
Amen.
Amen.
And, you know, so that's because I need this to be a big thing. Yeah.
Can you give the audience a couple things about mental health? What can they do when they run, other than call you, which you're gonna give your information?
Yeah.
But what kind of routines can they get into to help them with mental health? You know,
absolutely.
Identify it or.
Yep. So that will go into my book. I just was explaining the difference between the two, because a lot of people sometimes get the book confused with the brand. So the brand is Mental Health is Sexy. The book itself, though, is called Renew Your Mind, Take Charge of Your Mental Health, 8 Alternative Ways to Improve Your Quality of Life. This book, straight to the point. I don't do all the fluff language. I hate reading literature like tell me what you need to tell me. So in 68 pages, I'm sharing with you the literal 8 techniques that I personally used almost 10 years ago to beat manic depression. The very first chapter out the gate is teaching you how to forgive yourself for being duped. Because a lot of times, as I mentioned earlier, is the negative thoughts we have about ourselves, somebody else planted it. Whether it was TV, music, social media, a hating cousin, somebody at school, somebody planted it. And at some point there was a shift and we believed it. So the first thing we have to do is identify the thoughts that we think repeatedly to make us feel depressed or to make us feel anxious, and identify what's true, like what you got a receipt for, or what's just something you're just anxious about or somebody convinced you of. Right? So the book is actually interactive. At the end of each chapter, there are exercises immediately. Because I don't need people just to read this and say, okay, that was a good book. That's fun. No, I need you at the end of each chapter to start applying the information I wrote in here. One of the biggest things I spend time on in the book is teaching people how to identify those harmful thoughts and how to transform those harmful thoughts into healthy thoughts. So to give the audience a tip real quick, if you have a thought of I'm fat because your ex-husband told you you was fat, your mama told you you was fat, your daddy teased you, you got teased in school, you look in the mirror, think you fat, okay, that's something you can change. So let's create an action plan to no longer be fat to yourself. Right? Because if you believe that, we're going to forget everybody else, but if you believe that about yourself, then it's a real harmful thought. If it's something you look in the mirror and you're really not fat, throw that away because somebody else taught you that. But if I teach you how to throw it away and I don't give you something to replace it with, what's going to happen that next time you're feeling bad? You're going to go back to what you know and keep telling yourself, I'm fat. So we learn in the book how to replace harmful thoughts with healthy thoughts. So for instance, some people may look at my thick frame and say I'm fat, but I don't say that. Honey, I am thick and curvy. You feel me? I'm thick and curvy. So if I had a problem with people telling me I'm fat and I internalize that, I would replace that thought with, oh no, I'm thickalicious. We're going to coin it. I'm thickalicious. So every time that thought comes up, I'm counteracting that thought and saying, I'm thickalicious. But the big thing, and over time, I'm going to have less and less thoughts of me being fat, and I'm going to remember I'm thickalicious. Now I'm thickalicious, but I could take 4 inches off the middle. You know, so we're going to be real with ourselves. Right. But we're not going to be harmful with ourselves, and it takes work. And that's why I tell people, this isn't a magic pill. This isn't, oh, you're going to read these 68 pages and have an epiphany the next morning and everything's going to be right. No, this is work, but it can be done without medication, because medication, we're treating the symptoms. But this right here, we're doing the work to erase harmful thought patterns. Another chapter in here too that a lot of people find a challenge with is changing the people around you. That ain't nothing new. I'm not teaching any new concepts in this book. I just put them together in 8 steps that I use that I know that work. And I still have to use them today. Because just because I conquered cutting myself doesn't mean that stuff still don't happen today to hurt my feelings, or to make me cry, or to make me question how I am as a mother or a wife or an entrepreneur. There's things that's happening right now in my life that almost took me out had I not had a mental health self-care routine to fall back and assess and say, hold on, we ain't about to do this.
I'm going to say, you can't go nowhere because I like you.
Honey, I like me too. No, look, thank you. Thank you. But I had to remind myself who I had to boss up and remind myself and give myself time to feel the feels, right? So we don't want to deny the thoughts, because they're going to keep coming back. When you ignore something like a fly, what it do? It keep buzzing around.
Right.
Until you kill it, right? It keep buzzing around. So we have to allow those thoughts to pass, but also have a counter positive thought, a healthy thought to replace it with. And it takes work. In the last chapter, I just want to touch point on, I teach everybody to celebrate your wins. It ain't got to be a big grandiose 2 weeks in the Bahamas. It could be get your favorite glass of wine and toasting on Zoom with your girlfriend. We have to celebrate. We have to celebrate our wins, because what happened when we were a child? When we learned to potty train, when we learned to say our ABCs, we could read our exactly. We were so celebrated. Grandma was on the phone. We got high five. So your celebration might have been bigger then, because everybody was like, yes, but you were still celebrated.
But my grandmother
was it's kind of strange though. I think this is another book, another conversation. My childhood was not the way I am. My childhood was totally opposite from the way I am. The way I am came from just age for one, and just learning how to love myself for two, and learning how to block out negative thoughts of others, what they feel about me. I block them out. You know what I mean? Even if I were to think of it, I make sure that I stick it somewhere else where, that's not my issue. That's their thought. So I think growing up forms the way, your environment forms the way that you are. And I think us as Black women, or just a Black culture, we have a lot of healing to do. You know what I mean? I think your door is going to be lined up with customers trying to figure this out. And I'm hoping you can help every single one of us.
I stand in agreement. I just want to add really quick, because we say this a lot as a community. Oh, this is how I was raised, or this works for me, or this is just how I am, and if you can't take it, get away from me. I want to remind myself, and tell everyone listening, it is perfectly fine to change and grow. You not being fake, you not leaving folks behind. It's perfectly fine to choose to change and grow. I've been on both sides. I've been the angry Black woman. I've been the woman that will verbally assault you just because I feel like it. I've been that woman, the woman to over discipline her children, to run off every man because you can't do nothing for. Like, I've been that woman. But what I can tell you for almost 10 years now, because this is a journey, you never reach the pinnacle. You constantly are changing and adapting, right? The other side of that is so peaceful, not perfect. I want to make sure everybody listening clearly. I didn't say it's perfect. I said it's peaceful, because now I've grown and continue to grow to respond different to life challenges. So back to what I said when we first started this conversation, I didn't need medicine to treat the symptoms. I needed to learn better coping mechanisms. But because I cut myself repeatedly, I got the boxes checked off to say, oh, she got a mental illness. Okay, that's fine. Now that you got your boxes checked off, how can you help me so that the next time I'm hurting, I'm not picking up a knife and harming myself? Help me with that. That's called coping mechanisms. You want to label me with a mental illness? Okay, cool. I'll take that, and I'm about to take off with it and help as many other people. I'm about to do that. But in the meantime, while you still checking boxes, I'm going to help my brothers and my sisters and their kids figure out this is what we need to do. And it comes with a lot of healing work, too. I had healing I had to do from how I was raised. And I had to forgive my mother 4 years after she passed. I finally forgave her for how she raised me, because you know what? She did what she knew how to do. And that took me almost now.
Yes.
Exactly. But then also, too, a lot of our parents were dealing with unresolved trauma.
Exactly.
These are conversations
that's exactly
that
right.
were
That's
had.
so true.
And that's what I was talking about with the serotonin.
You know, I'm glad you said, I mean, we can go on forever with this whole conversation, but you know, some people treat people how they was treated. They don't know no different.
Absolutely.
I like the saying that Jay-Z said. I hate to bring up Jay-Z, but he said this.
Why you had to bring up Jay-Z? Because he has some good lines, even if he didn't write them all.
People say I changed. People say I changed. But I thought to myself, why do I want to stay the same after all this work?
Exactly. Why is it bragging rights to say
you know, he actually got that from Deion Sanders.
Exactly. People say, you change. Well, why would I do all this work to stay the same?
Amen.
But he got that line from Deion Sanders at the end of Must Be the Money.
Just so you know. I love
yes,
it.
he did.
Okay, but we're gonna get credit to Deion.
But you know what else he changed though? But Ms. V, I just want to let you know that you did cut into something on a positive note, because I'm gonna turn cut into a positive. You cut into my bank account, sis, and I want to show you what I was doing. I was looking down. Boom.
So you're the text message that just came through. I've seen it.
I am. Yes, I am.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yeah, because I see. I'm like, okay, cool. But we're interviewing, so let me stay focused. So
that's why I was looking down. Just so you know.
Well, you know what? We appreciate you so much for coming to the chat corner. And you know what? I think you got to come back. Well, I don't think we done. Are we done?
I would love to. I don't think we just touched the surface. We just touched the surface.
We got to talk some more. But you know
what? Let me tell folks how to get at me.
I'm going to say that. Tell me how to get at you. And how to get the book.
My hood that came out. So,
what's that, Gino?
Honey, we keep it a buck. We keep it a buck. Only thing fake is my lashes. Let's be clear. So my website is www.coachvemp.com. So my link to my Instagram is there, which is at CoachVMP. My YouTube channel is there. There's over 100 videos. So that's over 100 pieces of free information that people can go to and get information about how to take charge of your mental health without medication. I'm even on TikTok. Like, I'm trying to touch everybody.
Oh God, you just said
everywhere. Everybody everywhere. Look, I'm finding there's so much work to be done. So much work to be done. So on my website, like I said, you can connect with me on my social medias, as Ingrid then just did. Thank you, sis. You can purchase my self-help book there. Ordering from our website means you will get a signed copy that comes out directly from me versus on Amazon that comes directly from them. There are coaching programs there. I haven't officially launched yet, but I'm doing a Coach VMP Designs where I'm making motivational home decor. So you can see some of that on the website. And because of COVID, of course, I'm not out speaking, but I am a speaker. I've done a couple on this type of platform, but I just love being in the room with people and feeling their energy and talking to people and connecting and inspiring. So I would love to come back, but everything you can get at me at CoachVMP.com. Yep.
Yeah, especially when I bought a new platform, so it's supposed to be coming back up again. It'll be live. I mean, because we get audience asking that question too, so we'll get it together. We'll get it together. Well, thank you so much. This is the Girlfriendz Chat Corner. I am your host, Inga Anderson.
And I'm your co-host, Ingrid Rachel Project. And right now I'm British because I want to be.
And we just set it up with Coach V. You guys can find all the links.
We love her. Follow
her. And also, too, we will stream this live on YouTube and Facebook. You guys have a great night.
You need to follow us, though, because if you don't follow us on YouTube, we will find you where you are living. We really won't because we don't feel like it. But I just wanted to say it. So, yeah.
All right, guys. See you later. Thank you so much.
Mwah!